Thank you. To start, my name is Ross Colonna. I am the Technical Secretary to the Utility Management Review Board. But before we begin, I think it's important that we introduce Mr. Greg Moody. Some of y'all may not recognize Greg. Greg is the new board chairman of the Utility Management Review Board and the Water and Wastewater Financing Board, the regulatory bodies housed in our office. So we're very excited to have Greg here with Betsy's departure. I'm confident he's going to do a great job and just look forward to seeing him around because I think you'll be seeing him quite a bit as we move. So with that board, I want to move into the board cases and annual information report summary, which can be found on page 11 of your board packet. So these are the total number of cases that are in front of the UMRB. We have 23 financial distress cases, 26 water loss cases, 3 training compliance cases, and 2 investigations. And so you can note that in the financial distress, we have 12 entities in the update cycle indicating that they've complied with all orders and requirements of our board, and we're pretty confident in the direction they're moving forward. Hopefully, we'll see them off of our list soon, be able to bring those numbers down and see healthier utilities in Tennessee. Moving on to the annual information report. So with the annual information report, as y'all are aware, this was a new requirement that came up a few years ago that needed to be filed with our office annually. Out of the 172 utility districts in Tennessee, 155 have complied with this directive. This is a whole lot better of a number than compared to this time last year. And so board staff is pretty confident that we are going to be able to see full compliance by the first meeting of 23. And so there's just a few notes there about how many water systems, wastewater, and gas have reported, along with some of the other metrics that we look at. The one interesting thing that I find in our water loss discussion that we'll have as the next item on the agenda is on the median non-revenue water by volume is 30%, which I think is pretty interesting to see. And keep in mind the metric that we set for being out of compliance is 40%. And we do note that there are 3 entities out of compliance with the training requirements, and we're working to get them into compliance with it. So as far as that goes, in discussing the training violations, when we were getting all the information and utilities were self-reporting that the utility body members were out of compliance with the training requirements, we sent them a notice in September of 22 that they needed to comply. So with our online free training, we're able to look at how many members are logging in to view that training. And we normally saw about 422 cases per month were being looked at, or courses per month were being looked at. After we sent the message, that shot up to 1,700. So we're pretty happy to see that members on both the WWFB side of things and the UMRB side of things are taking the training violation seriously once we reach out to them. So with that, we can start talking about the water loss violations. So board, you're aware that this board is tasked with regulating water loss. In years past, it was done by non-revenue water by cost through the AWWA water audit, but that has changed this year. We now do it but based on water by volume, and that was for a multitude of reasons. So with the new water loss requirements, we have compiled the list of the utilities that have reported that don't really have cases elsewhere for us to deal with their water loss. So these are the entities in this list that we want to send the I'm recommending we send the order to, in which they shall send us, board staff, an update by February 28th that details their plan to improve their non-revenue water and validity score. This plan should include any capital improvements that are to be made, and the entity shall remain under board oversight and until the board releases the entity. So I'll that's my recommendation, board, for you.
This is where the AIR requires a 40% gross revenue.
That is correct. Yeah. So the requirement now is 40% by volume. So it's a simple ask for utilities to sell at least 60% of the water that they push through their system. If they do not, then they would fall under this water loss requirement. I'll say
recommend.
Chairman, I'll move that we,
Have a motion seconded. All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
So next on the agenda board is the East Sevier County Utility District. Before we get involved in this, I would like to make a note. I think that there has been some sort of confusion, not only with this case, but cases that we'll discuss later on today about the actual purpose of our board and what we're designed to do. And so I just wanted to briefly explain it because, like I said, not only this case, but other cases seem to misunderstand what the purpose of our board is. So we're tasked in the code pretty much to make sure that we have self-sustaining water, sewer, and gas systems in Tennessee. But the way that we implement this is by we're attempting to protect the ratepayer because that is essentially the purpose of the local government, because all utility districts are a local government. They have a duty to the ratepayer. And when we feel that that duty is not being met, that's when we're tasked to step in to ensure the financial, managerial, and technical capacities of a system to help protect the ratepayer. So with that being said, I would like to move on to the East Sevier County Utility District case. So at our last meeting in August, the UMRB voted to initiate an investigation of the East Sevier County Utility District based on numerous customer complaints regarding water outages, regarding potential water loss issues that we've seen, along with some other issues. And in doing this investigation, myself and Ben Johnson, we traveled to East Sevier County Utility District to conduct some interviews with folks that are involved with the East Sevier County Utility District. And I'd like to briefly run over some of the findings that I've included in the report that you have in front of you. So to start with the board training, it is of our opinion that the current board members are in compliance with they're in compliance with receiving the, I'm gonna try that one again, right? They're in compliance with receiving the board training. But we found that they're not in compliance with filing the annual the annual training statement with the utility. This training statement is, it's in the code that it is a statement that says, in the last year, this is how much training I received. And it needs to be filed locally with the utility district. The code is very explicit that if this training statement isn't filed, the board member is not able to be paid or receive any benefits from the district. So it's of our opinion that since this was never filed for years on end, that the board members in question should pay back the district the total amount of compensation and benefits that they received from the district. Moving on, eSCUD currently operates in a contract with Alliance Water Resources. Alliance Water Resources is essentially tasked with the management of the entire district. In reviewing the contracts with Alliance Water Resources, one thing that we noted is that when this contract had first started back around 2018, it was for about $450,000. Today, it's up to about $650,000. And I made a note that the repair limit only went from $30,000 to $60,000, roughly $30,000 to $60,000. We feel that there might be more to something that needs to be looked at when it comes to this contract because of the state of the infrastructure at the East Sevier County Utility District. It is our position that the infrastructure gravely needs to be repaired. And I don't think that that can be argued. The issue is we feel that based on the contract that's been provided, more oversight should have been performed by the local government, the governing body, the Board of Commissioners, to ensure that all of the contractual obligations through the contract to improve the infrastructure are indeed being met. And it's of our opinion that the Board Commissioners failed to ensure that the contract was pretty much proper to really help the utility district moving forward. Moving on to the water loss, there's a chart there or a table there that shows what the water loss reporting has been since 2017. You'll note that Alliance began around 2018 and somehow it jumped up to 66%. It's not because Alliance caused all of this water loss to occur. Instead, what I believe has happened is Alliance started doing the reporting correctly. Whereas prior to Alliance joining, they realized that the reporting needed to be done adequately. In doing so, we see that they are losing a whole lot of water And it's remained pretty stagnant. You can see that it's went from 67 to 63% from 2019 to 2021. However, board staff does feel that more needed to be done to ensure that the water loss numbers improve. And once again, we feel that while, yes, the board members are not the ones that are out there actually replacing lines and such, they do have a responsibility to ensure that a plan is in place and being enacted upon to make sure that the water loss is being corrected. And it is of our opinion that that is not occurring currently. So, and that kind of ties into the next point that we made, is that there's been somewhat of a failure to seek funding for capital improvements. In the discussions with the three commissioners at our interviews, and in board staff, we attended a ESCUD meeting in August. And at that meeting, it was stated that there hasn't been really any money available for rural water utility districts in Tennessee. We adamantly disagree. We've seen plenty of water utility districts, rural water utility districts of similar or even smaller size, receive grant funds to be able to improve their infrastructure. It is worth noting that they were awarded a $443,000 grant through the USDA. So we were informed that this was to address water infrastructure issues and that this was awarded, it was shown in its 2020 audit. However, we feel that there perhaps should be more progress to be shown for the sum of $443,000, but that's really not the point that we're trying to make on this instance. What we're trying to say is that there is money available, and at one point they did get it. We think that there could have been more money obtained in prior years, not just in 2020. And we think that it was a failure of the board, not for themselves to go out and try to get this funding, but to task other parties to seek this funding out from several organizations that do provide funding to water utilities. Moving on to customer complaints. I can say that I have not received more complaints of any other utility district in my employment here. And my entire employment here has been with utilities answering the phone whenever customers do have complaints. And I've never received, regardless of any utility, the amount of complaints as it comes to this. And they're not just easy complaints, in my opinion. They're regarding long periods of customers being without water service. And in my opinion, failure to properly address those complaints and creating animosity between the Board of Commissioners and the customers in which they serve, I don't really think that's a good practice. I think more should have been done to ensure that the customers were being heard and their problems were being addressed to maintain adequate water service for these customers. Moving on to rates. ESCUD has not had a rate study performed in at least the last 5 years. They currently charge $53 for the first 3,000 gallons, $3 per thousand for every 1,000 gallons to 7,200 gallons, $8 per thousand in excess of anything over 7,200 gallons. We don't, while those rates may be adequate because we do not see the utility district in the statutory definition of financial distress, we're not necessarily sure if they're reasonable or justifiable. Based on there hasn't been a third party to conduct a study to see if they are reasonable and justifiable. And that's going to be addressed in our staff recommendation later on. The last, and in my opinion, the most important point to relate to the board is the potential conflict of interest. And I'm just going to read this verbatim from the packet. ESCUD advised that it has done business with Ivy Excavating. Ivy Excavating is owned by Roy Ivy, the ESCUD board president. Board staff was given proof of payment to Roy Ivy for $5,000 for a poured concrete pad for a storage tank at a well. Board staff does not believe the Board of Commissioners exhausted all options in searching for a disinterested contractor for this work. Board staff has concerns the Board of Commissioners failed to provide adequate oversight to ensure payments were not made in conflict of interest to other board commissioners. As a local government body member in the state of Tennessee, there was a responsibility to report potential conflicts of interest, potential fraud, waste, or abuse to our office so we can investigate those. At no point were these ever reported to our office. And these were, the board commissioners were well aware that these payments were being made, and they were saying that they were required, but that's a totally different question because other disinterested contractors, in our opinion, really weren't being sought after for something such as a concrete pad. And we feel that it was something that we should have been made aware of, and we don't feel that the Board of Commissioners was doing their due diligence in making sure that payments weren't being remitted outside of compensation and benefits to the board president of the Sevier County Utility District. So with that being said, I'm going to run through the conclusion and then the staff recommendation of for the East Sevier County Utility District, at which point I would recommend to the board, but it's up to the board chairman if he would allow other interested parties from East Sevier County Utility District to speak. But first, I'm going to run through the conclusion and staff recommendation. I'm just going to read this verbatim for the record. The board staff believes it is in the best interest of the East Sevier County Utility District and its customers that a new Board of Commissioners be seated to provide adequate oversight and ensure the utility operates in the best interest of its customers. The currently sitting commissioners have failed in their fiduciary duty to the district by conducting business with a party that has a conflict of interest with the district, failing to ensure that the utilities rates are fair and reasonable, failing to seek opportunities to upgrade or replace failing infrastructure, leading to frequent interruptions in service, failing to control and implement a plan to control excessive water loss, failing to negotiate an operating agreement which ensures the best use of the district's funds, failing to comply with state laws regarding training reporting requirements, legal payments made to commissioners. The commissioners' pattern of behavior amounts to an abdication of their responsibility for the oversight of the district's operation and either the inability or unwillingness to take proactive action in the best interest of the district. With that being said, this is our recommendation. The board should order board staff to initiate a contested case to determine whether the current Board of Commissioners of the East Sevier County Utility District should be removed from their positions. Board staff are authorized to non-suit or otherwise seek dismissal of this contested case should the members seated as of the date of this order resign or otherwise be removed from office. ESCUD shall have the Tennessee Association of Utility Districts or another qualified expert as approved by board staff perform a rate study that includes the following: a review of the capitalization policy, including any recommended modifications, a review of the debt management policy, including any recommended modifications, the creation of a 5-year capital asset budget to be taken from the current capital asset list and to include future anticipated needs, a review of relevant utility fees, including but not limited to connection or tap fees, including any recommended modifications, and a review of the leak adjustment policy, including any recommended modifications or adoption of such policy should one not exist. So with that being said, that's the recommendation, but now I think is an appropriate time to hear from the interested parties, Sevier County Utility.
Thank you very much. We will hear from interested parties at this time. If you'd like to speak, please start by
Hayes. I live on the mountain water system. Very failing. Try to think of 100 ways to talk about this. We need help, folks. We need help bad. Current situation is falling and falling fast. Been advised that folks that are taking care of our system lost wells. The wells have gone down. We've got folks here right now sitting here today that haven't had water in 12 days. Not a third world country up in East Tennessee. The commissioners that are there, I'm in full support with y'all having them removed. I think the management folks that are there totally accountable. Not the reason the water loss is because of negligence. The reason I say negligence, we, the people here that you're looking at, have many times reported water losses. We reported, perfect example, they worked on a major leak in August, Alpine. That leak was reported management company back in the late January, early February, but not just me, also Trish Rogers. We were riding around in our four-wheelers and seen it, but nobody acted. We turned into leaks on other places over and over again. And all we hear, well, that's not our water. That's spring-fed water. But we were in a drought. Every creek on the mountain was dry, except where the water was. And it was pouring out. 2 months later, the current water resource company, found a leak right above where we told them it was at. 2 months of water flowing down the side of the mountain. Folks, we're in dire need. We are. Current situation we're in, and it's ugly. You know, y'all wake up, everybody here wakes up tomorrow morning and want to take a shower. Got it some days? Days we don't. You want to be able to open your faucet and maybe get you a glass of water. I will not drink that water because we barely meet the minimum, or maximum qualifications. The iron level is almost to the max. Even their own management company said, yep, that's water that you get out of the wells. That's unacceptable. I was speaking with a lady yesterday, talking about her doctor's office. Doctor even asked her, he says, why is your iron level so high? And I didn't know this, but I asked her when I was talking to her, about, you know, them coming up here and visiting with you, that she drinks the water, high iron level. That means her kidneys trying to process it. They ain't doing as great a job. Folks, we need help. We are asking for something. Again, I cannot personally thank the Comptroller's Division, CDEC, MRB, everybody, everything y'all done, because we've been fighting this battle for 10 years. Back in 2017, 18, we had a petition trying to get the board currently removed. We had almost 80% of the mountain agreed that the board needed to be removed because failing the system. Guess what? Fell on deaf ears. We've got a major problem in the mountain. The problem is we can't continue the way it's going because the infrastructure is bad. We need help of somebody that can come in and get us water. We know well C has collapsed. We got told that by the management company. They just put a new pump in well B. Put it in, lift breaker blade. What does that tell you? There's probably a short somewhere. They didn't get water yet. So right now, the whole mountain's operating off basically well A, off the mountain. Now they're going to probably suck it dry, but that's their only. We need your help. We would personally like for the state, call a state of emergency. We feel like we're in that point. We are in a state of emergency because our current management, current board has failed 100% in our view. Now, paperwork, they can look at everything, look good. But in our view, we've had people from that company, not mentioning, we've had people promise to sit in my personal living room, promising us 5 years ago that water will be better, we will have better quality water, and we will have continuous water. In 2020, my kids come up for Christmas. My son, one of my son, my oldest son, my daughter, my granddaughter, my great granddaughter. Yes, I'm an old man. You know what? Right after they got here, we lost water. We lost water. They had to go home 4 days early because we lost water for 10 days that time. January of this year, again, we're not a third world country, but we lost water for 9 to 10 days, depending on where you're at on the mountain. It's a constant battle that we're fighting day in, day out. And if it wasn't for these fine folks here in August, I seen several of them at that August meeting, shook their hands, and I begged them for help. And we're begging the UMRB today, y'all's help. Because we're not a third world country. I have been to places, I travel all over the United States. And if y'all could just know how many times that when I tell them where I'm from, God, y'all, that place, they ain't got good water. I mean, I've been to locations right in Sevierville and they laugh at us because they said, man, why do y'all stay up there with no water and a man and a water East gut that don't even care about y'all? Folks, I'm gonna give you a quote out of one of our own commissioners. Total point blank. You will not get, y'all probably remember this because this was the first day y'all were up there. In August, we asked them to resign. Asked the board to resign. We've been fighting this battle so long. The board member come right out and said, you by God, if you want us to resign, I'll resign right now, but I'll look at you point blank. You'll never get water on English Mountain, period, cut and dry. There's no organization out there that's willing to help y'all. There's no organization out there that can get you water. He said it point blank to all of us. That was, I see the heads bobbing. Y'all probably see them too. Folks, we got a company that's willing to step up for the first time to help us. And I can't thank them enough for at least trying. And that's WIT Utility. I'm asking again, let me rephrase that. I'm begging. I'm begging for the EMRB to get rid of our problems and allow somebody that actually knows something about water, knows something about pipeline, and can bring us good, clean drinking water that we currently don't have. Folks, thank y'all for allowing me to come up here and speak. Again, thank you, all of y'all. I can't, again, first time I feel like somebody's actually listening to that little small community, East Tennessee. Thank y'all.
My name is Patricia. I live on English. I'm going to do a little follow-up. I'm Mr. Hayes. I have contemplated times of what I should say today. First of all, thank you. Joined us on our bus trip today. What came through. I'm going to say, Mr. Colon, you pointed out that Mr. Ivy, the chairman of the years now, I have went to him, Rogers and I, several of us. Ivy, show us what we can do to help. Show us what we can do to get water. He'd always tell us, nothing you can do, nobody is going to help y'all, nobody is going to come up here and give y'all water. You're fighting a losing battle. This has been going on. I've been on that mountain. I came to East Sevier County because this picture right here is my two sons. This is my two sons. One right here. I came to Delta Cabin. He was killed in the head on car. My doctors told me I needed to get paid. Very, very sick. This is my only son. My son, my daughter-in-law, my grandbaby. Can't come to heaven that I built. I built and honored my son. Because, Mama, can we come up for Thanksgiving? Not enough water. Can't come up for Easter. You can't come up for mud. Because there's not water. Started up here and they get as far as Chattanooga. Oh, you got to turn around and go back. Mama, we can't come again. We can't be together. Well, move off that mountain. Well, I can't move off. everything I've got in that can. Can't go anywhere. I came from. We don't have water. We need help. Mr. Evan Romo sitting over there from a line. See you again, Evan. Mr. Romo, you have sat in my living room in my cabin several occasions, not and told us, me and my husband, sat in my living room the last 5 years. Please be patient. Bear with us. We're gonna get y'all water. Promise you we're gonna get you water. Have you not done that, Mr. Romo? Sir,
Doesn't need.
I'm out of line. I apologize. That has been the statements to us. Oh, God. Sitting right here right now. Times the water you get. Things all the time. Thankful though. We take 5-gallon buckets down to my cabin. We have to take 5-gallon buckets. Now, when we do get with us, with 3-gallon jugs, 6-gallon. That will flush your toilet 3 times. And you don't have any, use it for flushing your toilets. You don't have any bathing water. Don't have any cooking water. My husband and I paid $180 a month ago to join the Pigeon Forge Community Center. So we'd have a place to go in the shower, to take a bath. We go to the Coin Laundry in Sevierville, 38 miles round trip. Wash our clothes. We don't have water. We need help. We need help. We want to thank all of you for listening. And when we found out that WIT Utility was willing and able to come in, supply us with water, we had hope, which is something we haven't had since 2012 when I came back. We had hope. Well, what y'all think that is, but to us, that's a miracle. That's hope. I'm just asking today for y'all to help us. Help us to get water. Help us to have something that everybody takes for granted. We don't. If we got some water coming out of that faucet, we think it's a great day. Seriously, we can brush our teeth without having to go buy Walmart water. See all those bottles of water sitting over there that y'all are supplying us with? We don't have that. We need help. Please help us. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Heather Fromm. I live on English Mountain. I have a bag of goodies here that I'd like to show. My daughter turned 14 on October the 3rd. Her sister bought her a proudly signed white shirt. This is what the white sweatshirt looks like after I have washed it. We wear black a lot. You'll notice we wear black a lot. If I buy a t-shirt or a tank top, I buy it in multiples because I like them. Here's the stains from washing my shirt. Not because I spilt something on it, but because I washed it in my washing machine. Here's the other one. I should not have to purchase a home filtration system so that I can wash clean clothes. This is not clean. Monday, the 5th, I changed my water filter in my refrigerator. You can see the rust at the end. Now, here's the part that's really going to shock you. On 9/20, this came out of my kitchen sink. This is what I have to wash dishes with out of my kitchen sink. Okay. 9/27. This is what came out of my master bathroom when I went to brush my teeth that morning. Just absurd. It sits and the sediment falls to about here. This one is from 9/30. I thought this was pretty clean. 10/29. This is the quality of water that we're forced to have. It's absurd. It's absurd that we have to do this. I babysit a baby that has to have bottles. Can I take the baby bottle to the sink and get some water and boil that out? Well, there's no way you can boil that out. You've heard them mention about Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve on 2020, we had about 6 to 10 inches of snow, depending on where you are on our mountain. We were out of power. And because we were out of power, we were out of water for 15 days. I have 8 children. Most of them are teenagers. Do you want to be locked in a house in 6 inches of snow with 8 teenagers? I'm going to tell you, the dogs smell better. All I am asking for, all I have ever asked for, all I want is clean, drinkable, consistent water at a fair price. Again, clean, consistent, drinkable water at a fair price.
Thank you very much. At this time, we have heard from the public, interested public, and thank you all for coming and attending this. Got one more?
Chairman, and members, building management review board, my name is Appleby, and the firm of Owens, Wilson, Coleman, and Knoxville, represent reserve at English Mountain, which is a development of Dan Barnett, who is here today. Dan asked me to get engaged in this, to try to be a part of the solution, find some solution to help with the severe that live on English Mountain and are customers of East Severe County Utility District. There's really not much I can add to testimony heard and to a very excellent report prepared by Mr. Colon staff. And I want to commend Mr. Colon and his staff for the thoroughness of their report and their investigation. There are 3 one, members of the UMRB will recall that after August meeting, Senator Steve Sutherland, who represents this district, Senator Sutherland intended to be, communicated with each other. Yesterday, he told me he had a cold and would not be able to attend. But he did tell me and gave me his permission and authority to represent the court that he read the report that we're considering here today, and that he fully agrees with the staff conclusions, the recommendations, action in this matter, and the answers to the board. Secondly, I think what the board is being asked to do today by staff is a very important first step. We understand that the board, nothing that today will automatically pass the commissioners, but it will initiate a contested case. That's an important first step. I think it's important to show the folks, the customers on English Mountain Board is willing to take action to get involved with the heard complaints and their pleas for help. I think it's just really important first step. The final point I would make, though, I think it's justified that this board and its staff needs to remain engaged in this, engaged to keep East Sevier County Utility District under the oversight of this board to do certain things. One, to make sure that if these commissioners are removed, it's time for new commissioners to be appointed. To make sure qualified, competent commissioners are appointed who are willing to fulfill all of their duties, to make sure that the contract with the management company is being fulfilled, and or to look at other options that are available to provide water to the residents of English Mountain. I think it's going to take the continued oversight of this board and its engagement and staff engagement to make sure competent and qualified commissioners are appointed and that the infrastructure, Mr. Colonna says, needs to be repaired, or either that infrastructure is actually repaired and replaced, that we're not here next year or 5 years from now, still dealing with the same problems citizens, these customers have had to endure. We ask those boards to take the first interest and to continue to focus. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity.
Thank you.
So now I think it would be appropriate to hear from anyone from Alliance or someone representing the Sevier County Utility District. If that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we will move into that. And again, please state your name.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Steele.
Yeah, it's not working anymore. We had to turn them off.
All right. My name is Caitlin Steele, and I am the attorney representing the East Sevier County Utility District. I am here today to address the board in opposition to the proposal to proceed with an action to oust the Board of Commissioners for the district. I have been told, and it is my understanding, that Mr. Roy Ivy does intend to resign from his position as commissioner at the next board meeting, which is scheduled. The other two commissioners, Barbara Darby and Janice Brooks Hedrick, have spent considerable years serving the district. They both got involved with the district in order to help solve the issues with the system. East Sevier County Utility District is very aware of the issues that it faces with an aging system, and it has explored multiple extensive options to cure these issues. First of all, I'd like to address the conflict of interest issue raised in the report by the council. Mr. Ivy was the contracting company that Ford had that was $5,000. Commissioners at the time were under the understanding, and they assumed that it was appropriate as Mr. Ivy's company was contracting with the management company and not the district directly. That being said, they have ceased all such contracts with Mr. Ivy's company. And the reason that they pursued that contract because they obtained multiple quotes, received quotes that were double, triple the price. I have one such quote before me. Commissioners were attempting to act in the best interest of the district and their actions. They did not believe a conflict of interest in that issue. Mr. Ivy has agreed to resign. And Ms. Darby and Ms. Brooks Hedrick are intent in pursuing all possible options to cure the issues with the district. In regard to the training that they received, there is no contest that they actually attended the training. Further, they promptly submitted their certificates of attendance to the East Sevier County Utility District Manager at the time, where their certificates were displayed. While they did not fill out the UMRB forms within the time period in the statute, they have since filled them out and submitted them during that issue. I'd like to briefly address the management, water loss, and improvement issues that are in the report. In the past few years, the Board of Commissioners has overseen efforts to implement a meter installation program to determine the water loss issues that the district is experiencing. They sought and constructed and are currently utilizing the improvement projects that they obtained through 2 USDA loan/grants. They have continued to pursue other grant opportunities. Due to those loans, they did increase the rates in an effort to best serve their customer base. They pursued grants and received one in the past year from development to further water loss. $50,000 grant to implement zone metering on water mains to address and locate water, which they expect to implement in the next year. We've heard here today the customers, and their complaints are very real. East Sevier County Utility District is not contesting that. We've also heard them say that they'd like the district to explore other options, and they've mentioned Witt Utility District. They've also mentioned Senator Sutherland's involvement. East Sevier County Utility District is located in Sevier County. Senator Sutherland's district does not include East Sevier County Utility District. It does include Witt's location. In order to obtain water from Witt, the current proposal, which the Board of Commissioners has considered and discussed with Witt, would include running pipes under a TVA-owned lake up to English Mountain. The Board of Commissioners, acting in the best interest of the East Tennessee Utility District, does not believe that is a viable option. They have pursued and are in discussions with other ways to bring in water from other districts, including Newport and Sevier County. To close, I would like to implore the board this time to consider the effects of a complete ouster of the current Board of Commissioners, people who are committed to solving the issues on English Mountain. They've overseen efforts to improve the system, keeping in mind the rates being charged to their customers. And they continue to make those efforts. To briefly address the issues regarding their oversight of the management company and the contract value that has increased, I would like to inform the board that this was the first contract in the state of Tennessee that Alliance pursued. And in the years since, they've made their best efforts, and what I would consider any company's best efforts, to assist and cure the issues with the system. However, the repair budget is separate. It's a separate line item that East Sevier handles and not Alliance. Further, they've increased the employees from an original number of 4 to 6 and overseen major efforts to improve the systems. Thank you for allowing me to address you here today.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from Alliance or Scud that wants to address the board?
Thank you very much. So before this board right now, we have a staff recommendation to initiate a contested case to determine whether the current board commissioners of the East Sevier County Utility District should be removed or not. Need discussion.
One thing to note, and Mr. Overby pointed it out, but I do want to be very clear so everyone's on the same page. If the board were to continue with this, the commissioners are not ousted today. And Seth can provide more of the explanation of the process that has to unfold for that to occur. You don't have to use the mic or not.
order to oust the commissioners, we would have to initiate a contested case proceeding. This can be a lengthy process. We first have to file it with the Secretary of State's office and get a case number and be assigned an administrative law judge. At that point, we would serve our notice of charges. And now letting you know, beginning the case, letting you know we intend to oust them. At that point, we would have to likely engage in discovery and other trial matters. We would then have to set a date for a hearing before the board. The administrative law judge would administer the hearing and answer questions of law and admissibility of evidence. It would ultimately be the UMRB, the board members, voting on whether to remove the commissioners.
And so thanks, Seth. And with that in mind, on our side of things, we would do everything to expedite the process, should it come to that. But at any point during the period, the commissioners are able to resign their position. They don't have to wait for the contested case to decide if they're going to be ousted. Should any of the commissioners, including Mr. Ivy, choose to resign, the appointment would then come from the county mayor. The current members would then have to submit a list to the county mayor for who to appoint, 3 names. From that, the mayor would then have to make a decision based on that list, or he can reject the list. Should he reject the list, it would go back to ESCUD for a new list of 3 names. And then it goes back to the mayor. He can select one of those names or he can reject it. If it goes back one more time, get a 3rd list back to the mayor. Should he reject the 3rd list, it would then be voted on by the county commission, the county legislative body. So that's the process of where we're at now. And with everything that's been said, I still affirm the the staff recommendation.
Chairman, I'll ask a couple of questions.
You're recognized.
Ross, and looking at this, it looks like the current 3 seated board members, initial appointments began in 10, 12, and 13. They have served continuously from then until now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so they have been there during the entire duration of the Alliance negotiated initial contract to where they're at now,
That is my
as well as the extended period where water loss is now still showing north of 60%.
That is my understanding.
Just out of curiosity from my standpoint, if we looked at the action to pursue a contested removal, if they were all at one time, how would that initiate replacement of that board? Because I'm assuming these have all gone through the normal appointment process where they were nominated, the county executive signed off, or he didn't respond in such a time that they automatically came back.
Sure. So in instances in which the UMRB has acted before, and that results in either the ouster of 3 commissioners or the resignation of 3 at once, typically what has happened is we've worked with the county mayor to essentially get 3 interim appointments that are then confirmed through the normal channels. And so if all 3 of them were removed at the same time, it would be up to the county mayor for the 3 interim appointments. Was that your question?
I guess there, I just want to thank the staff for your investigation there. It is certainly empathetic to the people, and I know our authority is restricted, as I understand, just to the board appointments there, but you certainly empathize with the situation with the water quality and the service. One last question there. All the people that spoke today and the folks on English Mountain are current existing customers that get billed on a monthly basis. We're not talking about potential extending services to currently unserved people.
Correct. No, they're all current customers of the district. This is not an extension.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd like to make one. I'd
You're recognized.
I've been dealing with water systems. I've never seen such chronic long-term water as with this district. It also bothers me that I work for the Department of Environment Conservation. I'm in Division of Water Resources. The Tennessee Safe Drinking Water Act does not address water shortage, extended periods of water shortage. And that's a health issue. Because they can't flush their toilets, they don't have drinking water, can't bathe. But it's always kind of bugged me that's not on the books. But that's just my comment. And I'll move that we accept the staff recommendation.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Moss, to accept staff recommendations. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All right, we've got a motion and a second to accept staff recommendations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right. So, board, now we are moving on to page, bear with me a little bit. Moving on to page 119. 119 is regarding the Tarpley Shop Utility District. The Tarpley Shop Utility District has failed to file its annual information report. We have made attempts to get the annual information report from the Tarpley Shop Utility District. And in doing so, we've reviewed their audit and we saw a finding in which the contractor of the district is also an employee of the district. And that finding has existed for well over a decade. We're not comfortable with that finding and we want to seek more information. We tried to figure out what exactly was going on, but we have failed to get the information back from the utility district. So we are recommending that we open an investigation into the Tarpley Shop Utility District to, honestly, we're having a lot of trouble communicating with them and getting to the bottom of things. And so we would appreciate the opportunity to open an investigation into the Tarpley Shop Utility District.
Any comments on staff recommendations? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to accept staff recommendations to move forward.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Stone, second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting staff recommendations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is the Tuckaleechee Utility District. So with the Tuckaleechee Utility District, this was an investigation that was opened prior by the Utility Management Review Board as well. And so in doing so, whenever the board opened its investigation and we went and got involved, sure, y'all have a good day and safe travels. After the board got involved, a whole lot of changes started happening at Tuckaleechee Utility District. Changes that board staff feels pretty confident about. The manager has since stepped down to a field role, which board staff feels is more preferable for his skill set. Furthermore, they've contracted with TUA for the management of the district, and we are in favor of their continued work with TUA. Operationally, they used to contract with a contracting company, and there were some concerns with how that was being handled. However, that once TUA came in, that contract was canceled. It wasn't renewed in October, so that was a benefit. We do believe that there are water loss issues, but the district has since contracted with Rye Engineering to correct a lot of the water loss issues, and so we're very positive in hearing that. Rates, we think one of the biggest vulnerability for the Tuckaleechee Utility District is their rates. In my opinion, they do need an independent third party to look at their rates, doing a cost of service study. We don't, typically, it's not a service that TUA offers to do a full cost of service study, from my understanding. However, with that being said, since TUA is contracted to do the management of the district, we feel it should be a different party other than TUA or TAUD to do that cost of service study. So the recommendation that we're offering today is TUD shall have a qualified expert as approved by board staff, perform a cost of service study that includes the following items as listed. That is the reason we don't have, that gets separated. Hold on, board, guys, separate. Might have a little issue here and have to do that verbally unless I separated the pages in the packet, which I might have. Just bear with me. There's a few paragraphs. Yeah, we're missing a page in the report, which is fine. I could do these verbally. And so we're just asking for the contract for the expert to be sent to us by February, March. Remember what date it was? March 31. So we want the contract with the expert to perform the work to be submitted to us by March 31st. We want the actual study back to us by September 1st. And board staff should also be given the ability to give a 6-month extension on showing good cause of the utility, if that is agreeable to the board. I don't foresee an issue with this. Their board has been really good to work with. We have no issues with TUA, but I like including that extension in there just in case. So that is my verbal addition to the recommendation as written in the packet.
Thank you very much. So just to be clear, looking at staff recommendations of having the contract expert supplied March 31st, study completed by September the 1st, and the ability to do a 6-month extension if needed.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, I apologize for that omission. I should have caught that, but here's I did not. So now we're moving on to the Bedford County Utility District, and boy, am I glad to see them off our radar. Bedford County was one of the most interesting cases because I've never seen it before. They were under us for a complete deficit net position. It was a relatively new system. They were getting started. There were some issues with the debt, so on and so forth. And so at one point they had an entire net deficit. So we're excited to see Bedford County is now progressing. They're making money. They're a strong utility, in my opinion. And so, board, I am recommending that we release and close the case.
We have a motion to release Bedford County's oversight.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, moving on to Bluntville Utility District, and I have a few verbal addition to this one based on a conversation that I had this morning. So Bluntville Utility District has been deemed as financially distressed. We see that there was an increase in their salaries and benefits expenses. Found out what that was, I think. They joined TCRS, and so they wanted to buy a few years for their employees, which caused a spike in that expense. Furthermore, they've already reached out with TAUD, study done. They have implemented the rate study. They're waiting on signing the minutes at today's meeting or tonight's meeting. I've seen their draft 22 audit. They're positive. Things are looking good. So for this one, I'm just recommending that they send us those final minutes to show that they did adopt them whenever they're signed by the board. And that they send us financial updates, putting them in the update cycle.
We have a motion to accept staff recommendations. Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
So, Bristol Bluff City Utility District. Board, Bristol Bluff City Utility District and South Fork Utility District, which you can find later on in the packet, have been quite contentious issues. And I think it is in large part to a misunderstanding about what our role is as a board and what we want to see as a board. So this one is kind of done in tandem with South Fork. So some of the stuff that I say, just remember for whenever we take up South Fork. So with Bristol Bluff City Utility District, they sell all of the water to South Fork that South Fork uses. Okay, Bristol Bluff City Utility District is financially distressed, as is South Fork Utility District. Whenever the comptroller's investigative report came out against South Fork Utility District, board staff was looking at options to help the customers at South Fork. When that was being pursued, we were looking at merger options for the South Fork Utility District. One of which was the Bristol Bluff City Utility District. And we received a report back from Jackson Thornton showing that whether or not South Fork chooses go to the city of Bristol or Bristol Bluff City, their customers can save money. It didn't matter where they went. South Fork on their own just isn't feasible. But if they merge, the customers are going to save money. And that is the point of the board. I would argue that's also the point of their board, is to make whatever decisions are necessary to ensure that the customers are getting the best service for the lowest price. So with that being said, we want to further explore, because right now, I don't know what the best long-term solution is, other than South Fork should not remain on its own. That I do know, but we don't know what entity should be pursued for the merger. So with that being said, the Bristol Bluff City Utility District, in my opinion, should have a cost of service study done. They need this study done regardless. So, but we're adding with the caveat that there should be pro forma financial statements that would evaluate what that merger would look like on Bristol Bluff City's books to ensure that Bristol Bluff City's customers aren't harmed to the benefit of South Fork. We're not going to pursue a merger if either of the parties don't benefit. We're only doing it if everyone involved has a benefit. So with that being said, the entity shall have the Tennessee Association of Utility Districts or another qualified expert as approved by board staff perform a cost of service study that includes the creation of pro forma statements that evaluate a merger between the entity and South Fork Utility District. Now you'll notice there aren't dates and stuff including in this one as well. This was on purpose, okay? Because when it comes to the inclusion of like those pro formas, I'm not necessarily sure how long something like that would take. The board, I'm comfortable in working with Bristol Bluff City Utility District because they have been very responsive with us, that we don't need to set hard dates in there. I think we just need to order them to get the study done, and that should be sufficient and allow board staff the ability to just work with them on getting that to us. I am confident that we'll receive it before April of this year, just in conversations that I've had. But once again, I really don't know because this is something unique that we don't typically do. So that's what I have to offer here.
Is there a motion to accept staff recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Yes,
question of
absolutely.
clarification, sir?
Yes, sir.
Also, just make sure that I understand, Bristol Bluff City is the purveyor of water. They're the one that have the water source, water treatment plant. They sell to South Fork, which I think come before the board before was problematic and issues in management oversight, et cetera, which is also financially distressed. And so right now, we're just looking, staff's requesting authorization to look into it to find what is the best solution in total for the customers.
Correct. Because right now, the two options that are being pursued are the City of Bristol and Bristol Bluff City Utilities. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we get to South Fork. But as far as Bristol Bluff City, yes, that's correct.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Any further comments? Is there a motion to accept staff recommendations?
Move to accept staff recommendations.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so moving along to the Clear Fork Utility District. Clear Fork Utility District is very, very unresponsive. It is very difficult to get a hold of them, to talk to them, to request information. So we would like to go through the typical rate study instance with them. We don't have a financial questionnaire to verify some of the things we're asking for in the rate study. So we're doing a pretty broad rate study there. By March 31st, 23, the entity shall send board staff a copy of the contract between the entity and the expert who's performed the tasks. July 31, we'll get the completed rate study back. We're given the authority to grant an extension. Keep in mind that extension is more for the person doing the work, not necessarily the utility. We need to see good cause. And last, we do have the provision to subpoena the Board of Commissioners and manager of Clear Fork if they choose to not comply with this board order.
I'll move, we go with the staff recommendation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, moving on to Griffith Creek Utility District Board. I am very excited to see this one go out from under us. This was kind of my first project, if you will, whenever I joined with the comptroller's office, and I worked very closely with Griffith Creek. I had many long nights driving down to Griffith Creek when I lived in Clarksville, and I do not miss doing those, but I do miss seeing the people who were not happy to see me because we were raising their rates. But since then, they have contracted with Big Creek Utility District to do a lot of the work that's going on in Griffith Creek. Financially, they're doing much better. So board, I am recommending that we release their financial distress case. However, they still are under us for water loss, but we've seen them taking actions to cure their water loss. And we're confident with their plan moving forward, but we're going to retain that water loss oversight over.
So the staff recommendation is to release them from oversight of financial, but remain on for excess water loss.
Second.
A motion and a second. accept staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Board, this one's kind of like a housekeeping thing. Iron City Utility District should have been put on the update cycle at one of the prior meetings, and we just failed to include it on the agenda. So they've complied with all the directives. They've implemented the rates from a rate study. And board, we're just asking for them to be put on the update cycle.
So move.
Got a motion to approve? And seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, so next is Mooresburg Utility District. And this one is interesting because in a prior order from Mooresburg in which they weren't complying with us, board staff did have the ability to subpoena them to come to the first meeting of 2022. However, after the November 2021 board meeting, conversations were had with the Mooresburg Utility District, and we were assured that our previous order was going to be complied with. It wasn't. However, we didn't find out that it wasn't until after the UMRB meeting. So, board, the last board order said that we would subpoena them to come to the first meeting of 22. That has since elapsed. So, we are. This is an order for a rate study, along with all the dates that are included. But there is an order here ordering us as board staff to subpoena them to come to the first meeting of 2023. Or they just decided to not listen to a single thing that we're saying. I can say that our Office of Local Government Finance, we have very much difficulty reaching out to this district and talking to them. They're very unresponsive, and so I think they need to be held accountable for their actions. So I'm recommending that we order a rate study, but we do subpoena them to come to the first meeting of 23.
So the staff recommendation is a rate study with a subpoena to the first meeting.
Can I ask a question?
You're recognized.
You also obviously said they've not communicated well. Have they communicated anything, given any reasonable justification of just no?
No, if I remember, keep in mind, I have to remember this one correctly, but this is an instance in which the main employee, the sole office employee, has another full-time job. And so they're just not staffed to be able to handle things like this, which I mean, I get it, but it's not an excuse.
Yeah.
Like, you still have the responsibility.
To accept staff recommendations.
Got a motion and a proper second. All those in favor of accepting staff recommendations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, now we are at the South Fork. Nice to meet you. Now we're at the South Fork Utility District, which I was mentioning earlier. Board, if you remember back in April, our Division of Investigations released a report regarding the South Fork Utility District. In my opinion, some of the items in that report were pretty egregious. And I know that a lot of people on the board were not happy about some of the stuff that we found in that report. I am now happy to say that the manager has resigned. The manager is no longer with the district, which we think is a big win for the customers. They have out of their board of 5, they have 4 new members. We attempted an ouster proceedings against them. However, 4 out of the 5 resigned, and we were comfortable with leaving 1 on because he was kind of a newer addition that really wasn't party to a lot of the things that had happened since. So now that we have a new board, we're going to be getting a new manager or a new managerial agreement. That is fine for the short term. I am not confident in the ability of this district to remain on its own because I don't believe it's in the best interest of the customers based on math. The math can't be argued with that the customers will save money if they go with another utility, regardless of any other reason that there may be for South Fork to exist. In my opinion, they should be acting in the best interest of the ratepayer. And if the ratepayer can get equal or better service at a cheaper rate, that should be pursued. With that being said, there's 2 options on the table that I'm aware of, but I'm open to any other options. And it's either the City of Bristol or Bristol Bluff City Utility District. We already went over Bristol Bluff City Utility District. They are the sole water provider to South Fork Utility District. The infrastructure already exists. Years past, there were issues with Bristol Bluff City Utility District. There was a big investigation that came out, I want to say maybe in 2020 about them. It was a few years ago, if not last year. But all of those issues were corrected, and I'm very confident in the path Bristol Bluff City is going down. But on the other hand, you have the city of Bristol, who runs a larger utility, has, you know, a lot of infrastructure already in place, has a lot more resources than two rural utilities. But I think the city of Bristol does recognize South Fork's infrastructure is pretty miserable. And a lot of work is necessary to take South Fork on. And so that is one hurdle for South Fork to be able to commit to fixing that infrastructure, for Bristol to commit to fixing that infrastructure for the South Fork utility district. So the other huge hurdle for the city of Bristol to take over South Fork Utility District is it's mentioned in the fourth, fifth paragraph there, that if South Fork were to merge with the city of Bristol, they will lose a decent amount of USDA funding and the ability to get a USDA loan. And so, you know, that money is necessary to fix the infrastructure of South Fork. So it's something that needs to be considered in all options. All of that being said, I'm really not asking for a lot of action from the board today. Really, I just want an update from the utility district by April 1st regarding where they're at now that they have a new board, they have to figure out new manager, employees, if they're pursuing another merger, anything like that. So that's what I'm asking for today, board. Just an update from them April 1st required by the board.
Any comments? Entertain a motion to accept staff recommendations.
So moved.
And we got a motion and a second to accept staff recommendations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right. Getting to the end here, getting tired. I'm glad we're getting to the end here. But so now we have we have utility district revitalization fund rules. That I'm going to turn that one over to you.
Utility district revitalization was established by some legislation passed, I believe, this year. It's a fund that would allow board to give grants to utility districts that need to merge, but there's some financial barrier in the way. For instance, with South Fork, they might apply to the grant to try to improve their infrastructure pursuant to a merger. Part of that legislation requires that the board draft rules to administer the fund, and that's what we've got today. I brought these rules before you, I drafted these rules before you at the last meeting, and you authorized me to move forward. So today we have a red line showing the few changes we made. The changes are mostly clarifying, really are entirely clarifying different parts of the rules. That's after sort of an informal review of the AG's office. We held a public hearing on the rules, and there were no attendees, no comments submitted. So you've got a red line showing changes made to the rules, and then after that, starting on page 225, that is substantially the rulemaking filing form that I'll submit to the AG's office and then the Secretary of State's office.
So here, I think we're just looking for.
Yes, just a motion to accept the rules and authorize me to move forward with being registered with the Secretary of State's office.
What the staff done.
Got a motion. Is there a second? Got a motion and a second. All in favor to accept staff recommendations on these rule changes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Finally, we get to figure out when I get to see y'all next year. So the dates that I have suggested here are April 20th, 2023, August 31st, 2023, December 7th, 2023. Some of y'all are aware, normally we schedule 3. We typically only have 2. We have to have 2 meetings in a year, but I like to schedule 3 because depending on workload, it helps. So are there any objections to the dates that have been provided today?
That worked for me.
Here,
That's good.
Philip's over there looking for a reason not to be able to come.
Actually, the only conflict I have is the April 20th.
Okay. I think if that's the only one, I don't think we'll change that. But no offense to you, Phil. I do love when you come in town, man, but
No worries.
Tom, any issues with those? No. Greg? Okay, then, yeah, I recommend those dates for us to adopt.
All right, we have a recommendation for our next three dates in 2023, April 20th, August 31st, and December 7th. Entertain a motion.
Absolutely.
We got a motion for those dates
Second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before this board today? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.